Hello everybody and welcome to Chef Glenn's Kitchen. Today we are going to make cheesecake. I have any flavor cheesecake recipe that I'm going to show you two different cakes today. Now a little intro story. Back in the 80s when I was working as the chef saucier at the 5-star Sheraton, one of the assistant pastry chefs got into a car accident and we needed somebody to go work in the pastry shop. The executive chef asked me if I would be willing to go in and spend some time there, and I did. And I really enjoyed myself, and I learned a lot, and I excelled. He gave me a challenge one day. We did 400 people every Sunday for Sunday brunch. It was $45 a head, and that's 35 years ago. And we had a recipe for cheesecake that started with a 25-pound case of cream cheese. The chef challenged me to take this recipe and break it down so we could turn one single recipe into many different flavors. So it'd be a lot easier on the pastry cooks and chefs to produce all of these different flavor cheesecakes for one singular Sunday brunch. So that's exactly what I did. So today we are going to use the base recipe, which uses 3 ingredients plus flavoring. I'll talk about that in a minute. We are going to do a chocolate and Grand Marnier cake with chocolate chip cookie base, and we're going to do a classic cherry cheesecake with some cherry pie filling. Now I've mentioned before about the secret to cheesecakes. Tinfoil ball. That is going to make you beautiful cheesecake every time. What is the significance of the tinfoil ball, you're all wondering? Well, first you have to understand what's happening with the recipe as it's being baked. When you take something that is high in egg content and you bake it for a long period of time, especially at a higher temperature, the protein in the egg white actually becomes tough. Think about when you've gone to go fry an egg and you've had the heat on too high and the egg white gets brown. When you go to eat that, there's a toughness and a chewy to it. So we wanted to get away from that. So what we did is we lowered the initial cooking temperature and then we dropped it for a little bit right at the maximum point of where the eggs would no longer lift the cake in the pan. And then we actually turned the oven off, opened it a crack, put the tinfoil ball in there and closed the door, but so it's open a little bit. What this does is it keeps the majority of the heat in the oven but lets enough escape that the cake doesn't actually bake anymore, but the egg whites coagulate better and much softer. So to begin with, when you are baking, and this goes for every recipe, all of your ingredients should be at room temperature. And there's 2 main reasons for that. Number 1 is, when ingredients are close to the same temperature, they mix together much easier and they blend or homogenize much better. Number 2 is, especially a recipe high in egg, if the eggs are at room temperature, and every professional baker and pastry chef, they don't put eggs in the fridge, the eggs will give you much more rise in the oven if they started at room temperature as opposed to if you started with a cold egg, which is going to cool whatever batter you're making down, and it's going to take that much longer in the oven for it to get to the point where it starts to rise. Okay, so let's get started. We want to, for 2 7-inch cakes, we're going to use 5 boxes or 1,250 grams of Philadelphia cream cheese. You get what you pay for. Don't buy the cheap stuff. It's good stuff. It's worth it. We're going to use 350 grams of sugar in there, and we are going to add 6 eggs that are just slightly mixed up. Okay, so I've got my cream cheese in the bowl. I'm going to crank it up. We're going to give that a bit of a spin. And in between, we're going to scrape down the sides very well with the rubber spatula so that everything blends in very nice. So we'll turn that off. We'll drop our bowl. And we'll take our spatula and we'll just push stuff down around the sides. Scrape it on the paddle, and we'll do that again for a couple more minutes and then we'll add the sugar. Doesn't really matter what speed you're using on this, because it's not like a bread dough. We're not looking to develop any gluten or anything like that. There's no flour in this cake. So we're going to put our sugar in. And just let that mix slowly so it doesn't go flying out of the bowl. Once it's mixed with the cream cheese, we'll turn it up a bit. And let's give that another really good scrape all the way around. This cheesecake recipe that we're using here right today, I'm going to talk to you about the bases and the flavors now. You can use any cookie, biscuit, anything like that for the base. You're just going to add a little bit of melted butter and some sugar to it, and I'm going to show you how to press that into the cake pan. You can use ginger snaps, you can use Oreo cookies, not the filling part. Classic, of course, is just a graham cracker mix. You can do mixes of half this, half that. Just anything dry. So what I did with the chocolate chip cookies today is I just measured them off, and then I put them into a Ziploc bag and crushed them with a rolling pin, and now I have chocolate chip cookie crumbs. You'll see that in a second. Okay, we have a nice creamy recipe here, and we're just going to add our egg a little bit at a time. Going to let that mix in, give it a scrape, and then we're going to get our bases going. When it comes to flavoring your cheesecakes, you can add anything you want, as long as it's not a ton of liquid, so that it doesn't change the science part of the recipe itself, and it will work. So today, for flavoring in the Grand Marnier and chocolate, I'm going to put some Grand Marnier, of course, and I'm also going to put in some orange concentrate, orange juice frozen concentrate for flavor, and then I'm going to drop some chocolate chips in there. You can use any liqueur, any extract, any fruit pulp, any fruit pieces. In the cherry cheesecake we're going to make today, I'm going to put in some cherry pie filling, but I'm not going to do it on the mixing machine because I don't want the batter to turn pink or red. I actually want the batter to stay white, so I'm just going to fold them in. So we're going to mix this one more time, one more scrape, and then we're just going to set this aside. The last scrape I like to do, I actually take the paddle and the bowl right off and make sure that there's no big chunks on the paddle. Okay, we'll put that on, and we will just give it one more mix, and then the mixer is out of the picture. That's looking mighty fine. Now in both recipes, I am going to put some vanilla extract. Who doesn't like vanilla? Exactly a teaspoon, no more, no less. And our mixing is complete. Something I did not mention at the beginning, you always preheat for baking. You don't ever want to put anything into a cold oven. So I have my oven preset for 300 degrees, which is the first sequence. So we're just going to put that aside while we work on our bases. So I have here About 120 grams each of chocolate chip cookie, 50 to 60 grams of sugar, graham cracker crumbs, same thing. Gonna mix those up. Have some melted butter here. Gonna put in just enough to bind them together. Like I said, you can use any cookie, biscuit, anything dry. I didn't put as much sugar into the chocolate chip base as I did the graham cracker because there is obviously sugar in the chocolate chip cookie mix. Just need a little bit more butter here. That's going to work out just fine. I'm going to use our little scraper here. Talk about this scraper later when it comes to the pastry shop and the bakers and the pastry chefs. So that's ready for cake number 1. Cake number 2 is our chocolate chip sugar butter mixture. And it needs a little bit more too. What I had in here is the right measurement for 2, but I never put it all in all at once because sometimes it's a little too much. So it was measured, but I do this part by eye. Okay, so we're ready to go. So what we have is 2 adjustable cake rings. I like these. They're a lot easier than spring form, but you can use spring form. The nice thing about the adjustable is if I want to make a small high cake, I can. If I want to make a big low cake, I can. Just your preference. And because I'm making 2 cakes, I marked an O here. That means orange, so I know that this one is orange because when they're together, I probably won't be able to tell them apart. So I'm going to put our chocolate chip cookie mixture into this one. And we're going to push it around on the base, and you want to make sure that you put your parchment paper collar in ahead. Okay, we're good to go. Going to put our chocolate chip mixture into one. We're going to press it down. You want to put your parchment paper collar, I'll bring that over. You want to put your parchment paper collar in before you put your base. So when you press the base up against the edges, it actually makes like a seal, so you don't lose any or very little cake batter, as the batter is a little on the runny side. Okay, let's go to our graham cracker mixture. Put that in there. Come back to the chocolate chip one in just a second. This one's looking good. You use the round side to go around the edges. If you can see any light poking through, then you haven't sealed that particular part of the ring with your cake bottom. Put a little extra there. And we are good to go on that cake. That's for our classic cherry cheesecake. And we'll just come back to our chocolate, and we're going to go in with a spoon and force that all down. You can get the parchment paper in rolls. You can get your parchment paper in sheets. I am using both here. The sheet is what's down below, and then I have a large roll that I pull off, and I just fold it and use a razor knife to cut it to make a collar for the cake. This does 2 things. Your cake batter will not stick to the side of your pan. And then secondly, when you go to do the classic one with the sour cream, it will fill up the empty spaces around the side perfectly. So we're just going to get our cake batter here, and we're going to divide it into 2 bowls. Okay, we're just going to get our cake batter. We're going to divide that into 2 bowls. Okay, so this is the cream cheese, sugar, eggs with vanilla in it for both cakes. And we will address our individual flavors here in a second. Okay, so for the first cake, our chocolate and Grand Marnier. I'm going to use a half a bottle of the airplane size Grand Marnier, measured exactly. Now if you don't want the alcohol in there, but you want the flavor, just put this in a frying pan, warm it up, put a lighter or a match to it. It'll burn off the alcohol in 5 seconds and you'll get the flavor, but you won't get the alcohol. And then I also have 2 ounces of frozen orange juice concentrate. I'm going to put that in and we're going to mix that together. And then after I put it in the pan, I'm going to drop some milk chocolate chips in there. Now there's 2 ways to finish cheesecakes. The classic cherry cheesecake I'm going to do here is going to be finished tonight after we put a sour cream topping on it, which I'll explain a little bit later. This one, the chocolate and Grand Marnier, we will decorate this tomorrow after it's cooled and sat in the fridge. So we're going to pour our batter into our pan. I have taken some cherry pie filling. I've strained out some of the jelly. I'm going to use that to decorate. Now these cherries I'm just going to put in and fold. I don't want the batter to go pink on me. So I'm just going to break them up a little bit. You can't help but get some color, but I'd prefer if the majority of the batter stayed white. And that's about it. I'm going to pour that into this pan. Now whenever you're doing something with parchment like this, you don't want to push your batters up the side. That will burn in the oven and fall back onto your cake. That's definitely not a desired effect. Let it flow to the outside on its own. Okay, so now for the chocolate chip. I'm just going to take just about a heaping 1/3 cup of chips here. And I'm just going to sprinkle those in. And we just push them down. And then we are going into the oven for stage 1 of baking. Stage 1 is 40 minutes at 300 degrees. Egg white, the protein in your egg white, gets tough at 350. So it's not advisable to bake something this heavy and dense at 350 for a long period of time. So I've got my oven set and I've got my thermometers in there. I am just going to check to see that they are the right temperature. And we're exactly at 300 degrees. Perfect. So we're going 40 minutes at 300. This will get as much rise as you possibly can out of the egg white. 15 minutes at 275 helps to coagulate that egg white. Then we're going to go 45 minutes with the oven off with our secret tinfoil ball in there. And then we have to actually turn the oven back on to finish the cherry cheesecake. And you'll see that once we get there. So the cakes are going in. I'll be back in 40 minutes.